So I'm just doing some recording and then I'll turn it off at the end when we have a chat. So as I've just said, is home the key to physiological birth? Where do I start? And that's thinking that that person there is perhaps a student midwife or a newly qualified midwife being told, I've got to tell people their options. How am I going to do that? What makes home birth different to hospital birth? You really need to know that. Otherwise, why would anybody stay at home? I might as well. We live in a fear-based culture at the end of the day, where it's seen to be a safe choice to be in hospital or in a birth unit. I don't know where you guys are all from, but down in Cornwall, we're very lucky. We have an on-site unit. We've got 2 off-site units. We've got the Isles of Scilly with a birth unit. So for us down here, women and birthing people have got all the options. There are other places around the country. Well, you only have to go Plymouth up the road, and they don't. They only have the delivery suite, a birth pool on delivery suite and home. So for them, they've really only got the 2 options. Is there a point to staying at home when hospital births are the norm and it's safe? I mean, is it even safe to have your baby at home? So this is what we're going to be covering. Why home is different to hospital, why your body works better at home, and why choosing home birth is a safe choice. So who am I? Who am I to be telling you this stuff? Why listen to me? Honestly, you don't have to listen to me, but obviously you must think I've got something worth saying. So I qualified in 2002. I was direct entry midwife with Bournemouth University, which had a very feminist, at the time, woman-centred leaning towards about, you know, sort of informed choice. We had independent midwives who are our lecturers. It was, you know, it was like, I knew one day I wanted to be an independent midwife. So I went off and I worked in Spain for a bit, came back to the UK, and I mainly specialised in community-based midwifery in the NHS, but I've also worked as an independent midwife. I worked at the time when insurance wasn't an issue. People just booked you and you looked after them, and it was amazing. I've also since worked under the insurance model with private midwives, and that was really good. But it means that people do have to have more money to be able to pay for that, you know. And I feel that I give the same care as much as I can. It's not the same because I don't spend 2 hours in somebody's home like I would with an independent client, but I aim to give the same choice and options and information that I would to somebody who is having NHS care. I also trained and worked as a doula for a bit. That was before the insurance was an issue, which was great because I stepped out of the NHS and I learned other stuff then. And then, yeah, I did get the Iolanthe Award this year, which was amazing, to fund optimising birth project that I started, which was the Biomechanics Day that some of our midwives went to. And I'm halfway through my master's in advanced midwifery practice. Sorry, shut up, I'm just going on. So anyway, I love this stuff and I want to share it with you. So I skipped one. Oh yeah, and the other thing is I've had 3 children. So my first child, I was pregnant in 1995, and Jack is my eldest, and they were born in a hospital. At the time, I was given no other choice. Basically, it was, which hospital do you want to have your baby? Do you want to go to Southampton or do you want to go to Portsmouth? I did not know. It was the days before the internet, before any knowledge. I had no awareness of anything. I had the NHS pregnancy book, and what's surprising is that actually on the unit, the hospital that I gave birth in Portsmouth, where I later trained, actually already had a birth unit downstairs. I think they already had it built at the time when I had my first baby, but that was not an option. You know, first time mums were just kept out of the loop of anything else. You had to go to a delivery suite. So I went to this delivery suite, absolutely terrified. I'm a fit, healthy woman of, I think I was 23 at the time, never been to hospital in my life. My heart was pounding as I arrived at the hospital. Yeah, you're 3 centimetres, here's a TENS machine, go and walk up and down the ward. Okay, that's all right then. I think I did some antenatal classes, but that's about it. And I remember this room that I ended up in. It was just, you know, it was just a bog standard room with a bed in the middle. I think it was a wardrobe or a cupboard in the corner. And I had experienced the whole labour on my back with a monitor on. Why the hell did I have a monitor? I've no idea. Just puffing away on the gas and air. I had probably had at least 2 shots of pethidine. That seemed to help. And then cried out for an epidural, as probably you would expect in that case. Nobody once suggested changing position. Nobody got me off the bed. And we're not talking the dark ages, we're talking 1995. And I scraped through without getting, they said the anaesthetist was busy. I don't know, maybe the midwife was fobbing me off. But anyway, I managed to push my baby out, had a 2nd degree tear. I had an anxious partner. It was totally disempowering. I was glad it was all over. And there was just no choice. And I also, funnily enough, I signed a paper that said I would have active management of labour. So that meant the waters being broke. It's like the Irish thing that they did from, can't remember the name of the hospital out in Ireland. It was piloted by them. And it's, you know, you will have your baby in 12 hours. Oh, that sounds all right. Okay, I'll sign my name to that, you know. More people coming. So that was my first experience. And even though I know as midwives, we go into this work with understanding the academics, the theory, the research, but we take with us as individuals who we are and what we've experienced. And I think that had an effect on me. And now this is me after my 2nd birth. So I was pregnant again within 22 months that I was having my 2nd baby. I happened to be in Plymouth, living in Plymouth at the time, different area, and was in with a group of mums that just all had their babies at home. It was NCT. We had NCT coffee mornings. Home birth was a norm. I thought that sounds like a good thing. I read one book, it was the Janet Velasquez book. I stayed at home, and I remember going into labour upstairs. I hadn't even thought about what I was going to do with Jack. Jack was just asleep in the bedroom, and just laboured in the dark, leaning over the banisters, in what I later understood was true Michel Odent style. You know, I was just breathing and using my breath, standing upright. And they tried to give me the gas and air, and I couldn't. They gave it to me in a mask, which was really horrible. So I said, no, thank you, I don't want that, and just use my breathing. Afterwards, I remember feeling so proud of myself for doing that. Whether anyone says that somebody's on an external level, it's right that one person's experience is not better than someone else's experience, but what they individually inside feel is the most important thing. So for that person, if their experience, and they've had a really empowering experience, they could have had an empowering cesarean. I know that's possible. And for some people, they'll go down that route. But for those people who want to have a vaginal physiological birth, and know in their heart that that will increase their sense of self-esteem and empowerment and being able to move forward, I know that that birth helped shape who I am today. That experience, it was incredible. I ended up lying on my back on the bed when the midwife said, do you want to push now? And I thought, well, I'm not really, but okay. And then had another secondary care because I had a 9-pound baby, and she sort of said, would you like to move? Not really. So rather than go, would you like to move, because this would be really good, this would open up your pelvis, this would do all these things, I was but I birthed the baby by myself under my own steam in my own home. And then Jack came into the bathroom and saw their brother. It was amazing. So just from that one thing, that's what the difference is, you know. Somebody's own experiences is so important. And I feel as a midwife, how I learnt a lot, what has helped me is to read a lot of experiences and stories of women and people, that's really important to hear it in their words, what a difference it made to them, how it made them feel. If you get to be at a home birth, you can see it's amazing. And yeah, you can do that in hospital. You can do that. I've supported some amazing physiological births in a hospital environment, but this is the difference. Most of you will know this, so it's just a sort of, you know, a run through really of it, that you've got this incredible power within us. So by the end of pregnancy, the endorphins are starting, and this is what I talk to people on when I'm doing their 36-week visit. If they haven't had a chance to do some hypnobirthing or be able to participate in antenatal education in some way, then at least we can do something to say your body works and this is how it works. So your endorphins rise throughout pregnancy. So by the time that you get to nearing the end of pregnancy, you've got these endorphins that are swimming around in your body, making you feel a bit more sort of distant and relaxed and maybe forgetful and sleepy. And that's priming your body for birth. And then you've got the oxytocin, which we know is the hormone of love. Oxytocin and endorphins work in parallel with each other, and that's really important. We know that oxytocin works in an environment where you feel safe and private and unobserved. We know it likes the darkness. Where else could you feel like that but your own home? And I mean, my own daughter had her baby about 13 weeks ago, and she always thought she would have a home birth, but she chose to go to our local birth unit because the house was full. It was Christmas time, and it was just, we've just got a small bungalow with one living room, and she just thought, no, I can't do it there. I just feel a bit vulnerable. So it's where you feel safe. But a lot of people who have their own space and their own environment, whether it's a caravan or a house or a flat, that's going to be the place where they feel, hopefully they feel safe and comfortable. And obviously during labour, as labour starts, that oxytocin is going to be starting on the contractions. It's going to be starting those surges, those sensations, and bringing that on. And the endorphins are going to rise alongside it. So as the intensity increases, your endorphins increase as well, so that you can cope with it. All those stupid, you know, put a machine on a man so he can feel what contractions feel like with electrical things. It's like, no, that's like it. We are so much more complex than that. It's like we have this innate ability to be able to deal with it. Otherwise, it would be awful, and we wouldn't come back again and do it for the human race. You know, it's just that as mammals, you know. And as I always explain to people, it's just like, where would a cat go to have their babies and their kittens? They go behind the settee or in a cupboard or something like that. I'm not looking at the screen, am I? I'm looking at that. They'd go behind, and it's your cupboard. Your house is your cupboard. Your house is your safe space that you make your own and you invite people into. And that's a really important part. The adrenaline, obviously your fight or flight hormone, is ready to go at any point, you know. It's this fine balance of these hormones. And just taking yourself out of your environment, getting in a car, traveling to somewhere else, then can surge that adrenaline. You're going somewhere that you may never have visited before, being looked after by people that you've never seen before, in a strange environment. And no matter how many fairy lights and things we put around it, it's still not your space. Whereas if you're in your environment and you're sinking deeply into that depth of labour, which happens as we know those endorphins go, and you start like deepening into it and you don't really want to move and you don't want to speak and you don't want eye contact and all that, the last thing you need is to go, okay, now pack up and sit in a car and the bright lights as you're driving along, and then the car park, and then you through the main doors of the hospital, and then you're wearing a mask and all that. So that's not conducive, is it? You know, the cat would run a mile and go, all right, I'm not doing this, I'll come back tomorrow, you know? And we know it can have an effect on people. And obviously throughout all of this doesn't apply to people, those people who actually it may be safer for them to birth in a hospital, or for them that they know that that is their safe space. For some people, they really will. But there'll be a lot of people that don't even understand that home is a safe, good choice to have a baby. So your hormones are working, and then the environment is, you invite us into the environment, and that's a massively important part for people who are, especially those people who are choosing birth outside the guidelines, that actually at that point we are guests in your home, and whether you choose to get in your pool or out of your pool or whatever is up to you. And moving around instinctively, you're more likely, what I see as a midwife is people do move more instinctively in their own environment, and they'll bend down and lift their legs and change position, and it's like, because you're at home, it's not like you're on someone else's territory asking, can I do this? A big question that people will often ask is, what about pain relief? What if you don't need any? Who's ever thought of that? So we know that the body, helping people understand that their body has incredible resources to help birth work, is really important. That's the first thing that we need to make sure that we're doing. And so you drip feed that through all of your meetings with people, rather than just at the end of pregnancy, by the way, this is the number to call, and this is when you should call us with these contractions. Actually, right at the beginning, when they go, oh, I'm really nervous and anxious, you know, instead of just going, it's fine, you'll be all right, you know, people are having babies all the time. It's fine because your body works really well. Our bodies are made for this, you know, we're mammals at the end of the day, and it's not fluffy stuff. It's physiology, and helping people and use the language that people need so they understand that. So things like using hypnobirthing, as you can see, you've got a various little menu of choice there when you talk about pain relief in the home environment. The first thing is hypnobirthing. That should be just available free on the NHS. If you want to look at, there was some research done called the SHIP trial, which really tried to show that hypnobirthing works, but I don't think it had as clear outcomes as people were hoping. But that it was very different if you're just allocating to people. I think some of it is about going, actually, I want to do this and I want to participate and I believe that it works. And honestly, I've been sharing hypnobirthing with people since I worked in Wales, which was like 2007 when it was first coming out. It was natal hypnotherapy, and I saw the impact of it, and it was amazing. People just breathing their babies out, you know, it was incredible. TENS machine, hypnobirthing, I do think I need to find out, I don't have a link, but I need to find out where we can get it for people so it's free for those people who are on a low income, so everyone's got the same equal access. And I always think there's probably stuff on YouTube and apps, but I need to clarify what exactly there is out there. TENS machine, I know the same thing, it means going out and hiring one, and that's not always affordable, but hopefully we should be able to have more available. That's something that we could actually, that's something I might need to that's all right, just checking there's nobody else waiting outside to get in. Massage, aromatherapy, which partners can do and around the birth. Being active and upright. So telling people, actually, did you know if you're active and upright in labour, your labour is smoother, it's shorter, it's more effective, less fetal distress, so your baby likes it more as well, and that's easy to do in your own environment. You've got the fireplace to lean on, you've got a table, you might have a birth ball, it's there. It's a birth unit, but it's your home, you know. Borrow, buy, hire a birth pool. I think most people are doing that now, and having birth pools at home, but saying that you don't have to have one. I've attended amazing births without it, and especially if you've had a baby before, then it's not, you know, a lot of people quite easily birth their babies without a pool. I didn't have a pool actually, but we know that birth pools are really effective in terms of, you know, pain relief. And obviously midwives bring the Entonox, the gas and air, to the house. But to be honest, a lot of people in their own environment, especially with a pool and a bit of hypnobirthing, don't even use that. It's like the environment adds to the way that your body works. So is home birth safe? So these should be like clickable links when I send them to you. So if it says click, because I didn't know how else to make sure that I got the link there, and at the back, the slides, there will be the links. So research shows that home birth is as safe as hospital birth for women who are low risk and attended by professional midwives. This comes from a recent meta-analysis by Hutton, which looked at thousands, and it looked at lots of different studies and sort of looked deeply more into them. And it showed, because the birthplace study was saying that it may not be as safe for first-time mums, only mildly, but not quite. Whereas this is like lays it to rest, I feel. And Hannah Darlan there's a quote at the bottom that actually, you know, we're saying that home birth is as safe as hospital birth. Now they were looking at women and birthing people who are low risk, so who are healthy and having healthy babies. But if you look at the birthplace study, you've got some individual cohorts in there. It says here there were no differences between intended home and intended hospital groups in other neonatal outcomes. So in other words, it's saying it's safe for babies, because that's another important thing that people are going to say. But what if my baby doesn't breathe? Often they're not putting themselves first, they're putting their baby first, and they've seen things or heard things, and, you know, oh, won't they need lots of resuscitation? Do you bring that? And that's what also, when you say, you look at a birth unit, a freestanding birth unit, and home birth has nothing different. And that's important to clarify with people, that actually you could be trekking yourself all the way to your local freestanding birth unit when you might as well just stay at home. That the difference is that it's getting your own pool. And for some people, financially, that's an issue. So really, we've got to look at that actually for some people, there may be financial implications. I realised that with my daughter, because we were originally planning a home birth. And it was like, okay, so we need to get the pool, we need to get a pool liner, we need to get all the stuff for it. You know, there's the tarpaulins on the floor, various different things. I mean, you don't have to have it, but you know that's a good thing to have. So it does add up for people. Plus your TENS machine, your hypnobirthing, it becomes a very privileged choice to be at home if you want access to a lot of different things. And I think we should be sort of levelling the playing field for people to have that access, regardless of their income. And Hannah Darlan said, there is now clear evidence that home birth leads to better outcomes for women compared to hospital birth. And it is time this was given more attention. There's, I think that's part of the link at the end, which is what she wrote about, saying that, is it time now that we question facility birth, so hospital birth, for low risk people? You know, rather than keep trying to prove it and prove it and prove it, what is actually just baseline physiologically normal, surely we should be trying to prove why we should be sending somebody to a hospital, and why, and showing we know there were differences in the birthplace study. I've got a bit coming up about that in a minute. that showed that you just the same person walking onto a delivery suite compared to staying at home increased their risks of intervention. And the RCOG said, yeah, maybe we should look at that. And that was it. That was it. Do you know what I mean? Without any, it's always midwives that need to sort of keep proving and proving midwifery care, midwifery-led care works for people, and home birth, birth units work for people, rather than actually, can you please decide what you're doing in all these units? For those of you who live in Cornwall, you know I love our unit. It's not perfect, but I think we've got some very good consultants that are very supportive of choice. I've got a lady who's out of guidelines at the moment, birthing a VBAC at home, and she's had tremendous support from a consultant. But I recognise that not everywhere's like that. I'm on the home birth group, and it's horrendous what some people have to go through and what is being said to them, and fear mongering, and it's just, you know, it's always good to know, look outside of, you know, your own area as to what is happening. So this is something that everyone's going to ask. Well, what about emergencies? What about, you know, the midwives trained, you know, what about transfer rates? And this is a classic. Me and my baby could have died at home. So you will see that all the time. People will say, well, I'm so lucky I was in the hospital because otherwise we would have both died. You know, rather than actually the question is, did the things happen to you because you were in hospital? And those of us who know this and have done reading around it and understand the potential risks associated with every single point of intervention that leads to somebody having a catastrophic hemorrhage, where me and my baby could have died, well, all of those things on the timeline wouldn't have happened if you were at home, because you probably would have laboured well, and then if you did, we know that people get transferred in, you would have transferred in and possibly still had a normal birth, or it wouldn't have been quite the way that it ended. Obviously that's not the same for everybody, you know, there's a few, but the actual amount of really serious, scary scenarios are pretty small compared to the potential of us being able to do this safely. So what do midwives bring? That's not my kit there. You wouldn't want to see the back of my car. It's a mess. No, it's organised. It's organised. That sounds terrible. Terrible midwives. Everything's a mess. In Cornwall, we have our own kit bags. Everyone has got the same kit in it, and we check it at the end of every month. And that's reassuring for people to hear, isn't it? You know, we all have a standard kit. We check our kits. We carry drugs with us. Let me just check the next slide to see. Oh, no. So explaining to people that, yes, we have drugs if we need for emergencies. We are skilled at dealing with emergencies, but emergencies only happen occasionally. That's the idea, because otherwise, why would I do this? That's a really simple thing to explain to people, that, you know, if emergencies were happening all the time, it wouldn't be a particularly nice job to do, but actually the most likely thing is that it all goes lovely and smoothly. So we have everything to do an antenatal check, to listen in to the baby every 15 minutes, every 5 minutes. We follow the same guidance in terms of listening to mum and maternal and fetal well-being. We bring all our documentation with us, and we can sit quietly in a corner unobserved by you, and we can just get on with it and support you. And if you haven't looked at intelligent tea drinking, those of you who are aspiring student midwives, go and Google it, because that's what midwives should be doing at home births, sitting and drinking tea intelligently while somebody gives birth, you know, and also understanding that you need to know what to do, when to step in and when to sit back. That's important. So the birthplace study is the big one that we generally talk about in the UK. So we've got for low risk women, 88% of planned home births ended in a normal vaginal birth, compared with 58% who started in a delivery suite. So just for that, that's what I was saying. That is the difference. You walk on a delivery suite, you're automatically reducing your chances of having a vaginal birth. Now, if you've got, I don't know in terms of, you know, when you look at, you'd have to break it down again for birth units, but some birth units, we know, I mean, we knew this way back when I worked in Wales, that an alongside birth unit will have a higher transfer rate to delivery than an off-site birth unit, because some people will go, well, actually, I'll have an epidural, but actually, I'm not sure that it is the choice of the person giving birth, but actually the proximity to the delivery suite for the midwives. And I question, who are the midwives who are staffing these units as well? So if you've got somebody, I had a beautiful birth the other night with one of our local students, and they shared afterwards they'd never seen non-coached pushing in the second stage. So they were in their second year, they'd had a lot of experience on delivery suite, but they'd had some experience on the birth unit. And that scares me as well. It worries me that actually that students are only seeing a coached version of pushing. And we know the research, everyone should be saying that's not a good idea. But coached doesn't have to be, yes, go, 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 go. It could be just, go on. Do you want to push? Do you want to give a little push? Go and see how it feels. We don't need to tell people how their body feels. They need to experience it and listen, because if we start putting things in their mind, already they're going, should I be doing pushing? Off the subject there. I meant to do an IGTV about that. I will do. Transfer rates of first timers is around 45% and 11% for subsequent. So for the second, third time mums, I always say this is, you know, this is how your body works. Your cervix thins and opens at the same time. You know, it's likely that your labour is going to be quicker this time. So it is a very good choice. And the transfer rates, we probably need to do more work on that as to why people are transferring. Now this is interesting information from the cohort study, and yet people just seem to ignore it. So multiparous women, so that's people who've had a baby before, with a BMI over 35, without any additional risk factors, are at lower risk of needing obstetric care during labour and birth than low risk women having their first baby. So why are we telling people with a BMI over 35 that you need to give birth on a delivery suite, or that you can't birth in a birth pool? Because that came out of the study, and yet still nothing's changed. And that's really important, that actually we're not individualising care for people, that somebody who's had a baby before, whether they've got a BMI over 35 or not, and don't even go down the route of where BMI came from, but actually they're going to birth their baby. They're going to do as well birthing their baby as everybody else who's had a baby before. But I think that's quite a good little quote that I do share with people, and I give them the information and then they can choose what they do with that. Women who planned a VBAC at home had a significantly increased chance of vaginal birth compared with those planning a VBAC in an obstetric unit. Another one, it was like a small group that they looked at, because obviously we don't have a massive numbers of people who are having a VBAC at home, but what we do know is it works. Its physiology works for those people having a vaginal birth after a cesarean. Even more so, they need to be in an environment that supports physiology and optimizes it for them, because they've got, probably they're carrying a bit of fear and what's happened before and how their labor went before, but actually they've got a really good chance of having a normal vaginal birth, but in their home they've got a higher chance. But do we tell people that? No. So we've got the information, but unfortunately it's down to individuals to go off and find it rather than us tell people. So this is a study about, this was about home birth, when the women's reasons for choosing a home birth. It was, I think it was only 10 or 9, it might have been 19, I think it was 10 in Norway actually, but they've got an NHS system like us, and midwifery like a bit like us, and it was their reasons for choosing home birth. And all I need is within me was that's a sort of paraphrasing, you know, what they felt. And they had a strong inner faith. So these women chose to birth at home, and then they did some qualitative research asking them about why they were doing that. And the women in the study had a strong inner faith in the normal physiological processes of labour and birth, and had educated and prepared themselves for their planned home birth. And they said to be able to enter one's own inner world was considered crucial for labour, and the trusting relationship they had with their midwife made it possible. So they automatically had this faith in the physiology, and that's what I see with people when, especially those who are choosing to birth, that would choose to birth outside of guidelines, you know, whether it's a VBAC at home or they've had, you know, whatever it might be, but they want a home birth, a breech birth at home, for example. They have such a deep feeling about it, and that's really important that we recognise that in the individual. For somebody else, that might not be the case, but for those who it is the case, we need to really make sure we understand them and support them. They're not just making a sort of doing it on a whim. They're doing it because there's something within them, you know. And why does that flash? Oh, there's some chat going on. Okay. To be able to enter one's own inner world. This is home. It's just made for it, isn't it? You know. And the trusting relationship they had with their midwife, and that's a massive part of it. That's really key, actually being able to know the midwife who is there with you, and knowing that they are going to respect you and listen to you. And I think when we see that home birth, I think possibly I would question whether those transfer rates in the NHS have anything to do with not knowing your midwife. Because if you go and look at the Albany midwifery practice, they had incredible stats for their home birth, just their caseloads choosing home birth, and then having their home births. And they would have known their midwives because they were case loading. It wasn't continuity in a team where it's in name only. It literally is, I'm in the West team, so this is continuity. That's not continuity, is it? That's just anybody, like meeting anybody else from the birth unit. You've never met me before. You don't know whether you can trust me or whether you can sink into yourself and allow yourself to be in your own inner world. So at the end of the day, home birth works. It's a safe option. The body works really well at home, and you can only make an informed choice when you're given all the information. And I think that's really important, that we recognise that if people are going to choose, I think our home birth rate in the UK is like 2%, which when you think 2%, I mean, that is tiny, isn't it? And that one study that has now said, the meta-analysis, it was looking at where midwifery services are well integrated into the health system, which it is in the UK. We're well set up. We've got an ambulance service, which is fantastic. A lot of people won't even be very far from a hospital, possibly in their cities. And we know that it works, that it shows that the body works really well at home, and it's safe for the mother and the baby. I'm just realising, I think I might have missed a slide. Pooh. That was going to be looking at the emergencies. So I don't know why that's on there. I was looking at, because those emergencies around neonatal resuscitation, and how I explain it to people is that The baby is set up to breathe. It's made to breathe at birth. The adrenaline works during the labour. It starts removing the fluid from the baby's lungs, helping people understand and breaking it down so it's not a mystery that this magical thing happens, and that if the magical thing doesn't happen, you need a pile load of doctors and machines and things like that. But actually saying to people, at the end of labour, the baby starts absorbing the fluid from its lungs, and then as it's squeezed through the vagina, more fluid comes out. As the baby's born, it then takes a breath, and that inflates the lungs, pushes out any more fluid, and that's basically how it works. And the majority of babies are absolutely fine. Out of those that need support, we know that just inflating the lungs will do it for them. That's all they need. And I was trying to find some stats and I couldn't find some clear, like 99% of babies, but I don't want to say a random number, but in my experience, and I'm sure the experience of many midwives, just lung inflation with a bag and mask, or mouth to mouth, because if we've got free birthers out there, they'll be using like mouth to mouth, and I have actually done that on a baby myself, and it was just worked. It was amazing. The little heart rate comes up, everything's fine, and they're out there. It's a really small number of babies that actually need any further intervention than that, and it's definitely a lot less babies who may need drugs or further. And what we do during labour is explaining to people that things that happen that may be considered emergencies or reasons to transfer to hospital is that labour is long and slow. So somebody's not progressing at the expectation that the guidelines would set. It's not because there's a dire emergency that means that they have to, their life or their baby's life is in danger. It's just progress. And we could go into that about whether that's right or wrong. But that's what the transfer rates are, which makes you question, what about progress? Are we looking at that properly? So the reasons to transfer, that's probably what it is, and other things evolve slowly. So if there's some places around the UK will transfer because of meconium, some places won't transfer for if a baby's heart rate doesn't sound like it's coping so well with labour. We know that a baby is very resilient and it's made to deal with the stresses of labour, and so that in itself as well is not a sudden, we need to get the baby out now. Those sort of scenarios are much more likely to happen in a hospital environment. And I think it's important as well to say to people, but I can't guarantee how your labour will evolve. I'm not here to convince you that you should have your baby at home. I'm giving you some clear information and with some research to back it up as to why it is a safe option for you. But ultimately, it's up to you what you do, and in your heart, that's really important. That's how I speak to people. You know, you've got to feel how you feel yourself, what is right for you. And if after everything that we've talked about and explained, you think, not really, I'd be more anxious being in my own environment, then maybe an alongside birth unit would be the right place for you to be. And that's really important. So I think I could go on, but I think now I'm going to try and open it up for some questions, and let me just check if there's more slides. That's the slide with the links on it, with the ugly click here links. I'm just starting a podcast because I want to interview lots of it's a bit nerve-wracking, but I want to interview people and try and hold some of this information so people can access it and interview wise midwives. I've got a few people lined up on my list to interview, including Becky from the Albany. So I would look forward to speaking to her. And that's my links at the end. So come and find me if you haven't found me. You've probably found me through what I'm doing. So I'm going to do stop share. Look at that. So Verena, are you going to come on to every one of these that I do and share the links for me?
Well, you've got them all now, so
yes, save it.
I hope you don't mind, but I just thought as things were coming up, it might be useful.
No, thank you. It's really helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and that's great for everyone to see. So yeah, so we don't have to end there. Have you got any questions? If you want to put your screen on and you want to raise a hand, and I will see if I can answer your question. Any thoughts particularly about what I've just presented? Anything new or anything that you go, oh, I don't know, or even anything that you don't agree with as well? I've blown your minds.
I'm happy to share my musings, Evony. I'm really interested by the fact you said about the ladies with BMI.